Water quality is important because it's just so fundamental to our lives that we swim in the river, we eat fish from the river, we get our drinking water from the river. Ensuring that we've got good quality water so that we can partake in those activities without causing harm to ourselves is an important thing to do. Anything that goes down your drain in your kitchen sink, anything that goes down your toilet, anything that goes down your shower, it goes through a series of pipes and ends up at a wastewater treatment plant that probably your local town owns. When it's there, they treat the waste, hopefully very well, but not all the time. And then from there, they discharge it out of that facility and into one of your local waterways. On the Coosa River, we have some problems with wastewater. It can be anything from making an area not safe to swim or just contributing to general detriment of water quality.
We started doing Swim Guide in 2014. We really were responding at first to people calling and saying, is it safe to swim at, fill in the blank? And we didn't know, so we decided we're scientists so we can find out. We collect samples once a week, now on Thursdays, so that we can get the results back on Friday after they incubate overnight. Down in Amphitheater Park in Helena, where a lot of people swim, and had my grandsons who were playing in the waterfall, which is there in the park. We happened to find out the next day when I pulled the samples that those were the dirtiest samples we had ever gotten. We followed up and found out that the Pelham wastewater treatment plant had had an accidental spill and put about 4,000 plus gallons of raw sewage into Buck Creek.
Since our state doesn't require, comprehensive public notification, so people were out swimming in the water with their kids, fishing, canoeing, kayaking, kind of oblivious to what was going on upstream. The city of Pelham had notified the state, but hadn't made any, kind of public notice about it.
It's pretty common for these facilities to have problems, and why wouldn't they? I mean, they operate these huge, aging pieces of infrastructure. Some of these things are almost 100 years old, and maintaining them is not an easy thing to do. Every 5 years, wastewater treatment plants in Alabama have to get their permits renewed by the Alabama Department of Environmental Management.
The Department of Environmental Management will accept an application from a municipality or a private operation for the treatment and discharge of wastewater into a water of the U.S. What they're discharging out of the pipe has to meet those permit limits to protect water quality and downstream uses.
It's extremely common for a sewer plant to not comply with their permit, either because they had a sewer overflow or they weren't able to fully treat their waste. Some plants might not be able to get rid of all the E. coli that they're supposed to get rid of. E. coli is an indicator bacteria. It's present in the bodies of humans and warm-blooded animals. So when a sewer plant has a spill, there's going to be a large amount of E. coli, as well as any other kinds of bacteria or viruses that the humans who put waste into that sewer plant also had. Well, swimming in water that's contaminated with feces could lead to all kinds of illnesses, anything from just minor gastrointestinal discomfort to contracting serious diseases that can even end up in death. The way the law is written, and the law is the Clean Water Act, people should be able to swim wherever they want. And if they swim where they want, it's the government's job to make sure that it's safe for them to swim there. Unfortunately, in Alabama, that's not what our government's doing. The sewer plants that are upstream of that area should have to meet stricter standards if they want to discharge to a popular recreation area.
We had applied for our wastewater permit to be renewed through ADEM. and that's usually a pretty long process. And as part of that, we had asked ADEM to review our permit limits, which they did through a model process study. And ADEM returned to us basically a permit that had an E. coli limit, which was an increase of 5 times, 10 times more than what we were previously permitted to discharge.
Why would you need to increase it, and particularly for that amount? Well, it's sort of a just in case thing. And my argument was the speed limit on my road is 55. I asked the police to raise it to 70, but I promise you I won't do over 55, which is my normal speed. And so they said, well, okay, as long as you promise not to do over 55. Well, you know how that is, human nature. You're doing 55, and then one day you're in a really big hurry because you're running late, so you do 60. And then after a couple of times, 60 becomes your norm. So the city did come back and said, yeah, we understand where you're coming from. We understand the whole, your concern. And they reversed that and went back to ADEM and withdrew the request for the higher amount.
If your city has the ability to meet a more stringent permit limit, the most responsible thing to do is to do that. And we feel here in Pell City that with the investments we've made in our wastewater facility, with the importance that the watershed plays in our community, I mean, we're a growing lakefront community. We want to market the lake. It would be really the wrong message for us to say we want this to be our primary asset, but we don't feel strongly enough to really take proper care of it.
There are some sewer plants that do a very good job of complying with their permits, and there's some that don't. The big difference is usually dependent on how much money do they have to maintain their system. A lot of sewer plants in Alabama get into trouble because they don't raise their sewer rates year after year after year, and they end up with these incredibly low sewer rates of less than $20 a month, and they're unable to keep up with the cost of upgrading their facility. Meanwhile, their population might have doubled since the facility was built, and they just don't have the capacity to treat all that waste. They can apply for funding from the state to actually fix some of that, but in most cases they can't even get all the funding they need from the state because the state doesn't have the money either.
Hey y'all, it's Meg Summers. One of the biggest stories in West Alabama right now is the massive sewage leak that happened over the weekend in Northport. Hundreds of thousands of gallons of raw sewage was pumped into the Black Warrior River following a sewer pump malfunction. What kind of environmental impact can happen from this, and should people be taking any special precautions, fishing, boating, things like that? I found out about just how bad this spill was by reading a statement published yesterday on Facebook from Black Warrior Riverkeeper. They're a local environmental advocacy group, and they're dedicated to keeping our river clean. I've got Nelson Brook.
The 4th of July holiday is one of the biggest water recreation weekends of the year, and that was the worst time that this could happen and the worst time for people to not have information. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't have Facebook, and a lot of people weren't checking Facebook. They were out on the river, camping out, swimming, and enjoying the holiday on the water with their families, and they were unfortunately in the line of fire, so to speak, downstream from the sewage spill without any knowledge of it having happened. People in Northport, Tuscaloosa, and all downstream for many, many miles are really frustrated that not more information was put out, that exact locations weren't published, and that the volume estimate took 10 days. And we noticed in other reports that they've put out on other spills they've had in the past that they just said they put up a notice in City Hall. Who's going to go by City Hall and check spill notices? I mean, I would be surprised if anybody even knew that that was being posted there, let alone where to go to City Hall and look for that.
People pay their sewer bill and think that whatever they flush down the toilet in their house is being cleaned. The reality is that a lot of times it's not fully being cleaned. The amount of money that the sewer plant is collecting might not be enough to pay for all of the infrastructure repair that they need. The lack of maintenance and infrastructure leads to sewer spills, and then they still don't have the resources to even notify the public these spills are happening. And so it's just this vicious cycle of people having no clue what's happening out there, even though they're doing their job of paying their bill.
It takes citizen action to hold violating wastewater treatment facilities accountable.
Swim Guide is really the only resource that Citizens Alabama have to get somewhat real-time data on whether or not it's safe to swim. We're only able to test with our resources once per week during the summer, and it's a service that should be provided by the government, but because they're unable to do it, we're doing it as a service to the community.